Good morning, everybody. Thank you very much for joining us today. We're going to be providing an introduction and overview of the CivicSpark program. My name is Kif Scheuer. I'm the Climate Change Program Director at the Local Government Commission. So as far as an agenda for this webinar, we'll be providing an overview of the CivicSpark program, what it is, how it works. We'll also talk about the application process and the timeline for participating in the 2015 and 16 service year. We're going to try and move reasonably quickly through this so as to reserve time for your questions at the end. So what is CivicSpark? First of all, it's a Governor's Initiative AmeriCorps program. For those of you who are not familiar with AmeriCorps, it was created over 20 years ago. It's 20th anniversary last year. As the domestic alternative to the Peace Corps. And the idea was to harness the power of service as a strategy for change to address the most pressing problems that society faces. AmeriCorps members serve throughout the country. I think there's about 75,000 annually. We are part of that program as a whole. Every AmeriCorps program has a slightly different mission and focus and means of achieving its goals. As a Governor's Initiative AmeriCorps program, we are partnered with the California Governor's Office, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. But what that means is that the Governor, among his many priorities, has identified supporting local governments in their efforts to tackle climate change as a pressing and important area of need. And through the structure of the Governor's Initiative, which allows him to engage with AmeriCorps around certain programs, he identified CivicSpark, and his administration identified CivicSpark as a tool that they wanted to use to bring support to local governments in their efforts to fight climate change. CivicSpark as a program is dedicated to leveraging this power of service to help build California's local government's response to climate change. We all know that there's an immense amount of work to be done out there, and local governments for years have been on the front lines of working on climate change, and this is one way that we're trying to help local governments take action. We're currently in our first year of operation, and our program model is to place climate readiness teams in 9 regional hubs around the state. Annually, we'll have 48 CivicSpark members working in different projects in teams of 3 to 6 in these 9 regions. They're supported by 9 regional supervisors who are half-time project management professionals who provide both professional development and project oversight. We also have a network of 9 regional partners, and I'll talk about each of these in a little bit. And then we have our staff here at the Local Government Commission who coordinate the whole program. So as far as who's managing CivicSpark, if you're not familiar with us, the Local Government Commission is a nonprofit with over 34 years of experience working in the space of supporting local governments who are being progressive around sustainability issues, whether it's energy, water, health, climate change, or community design. We have a network of over 700 members who are generally the leading elected officials, staff, and affiliated partners who work in this space. And we're really honored to have this opportunity to be implementing the CivicSpark program because it's consistent with our mission to help advance the work that local governments do to address many of the problems and create more livable communities for California and beyond. The Governor's Office of Planning and Research is a core partner in this program, both in the design and implementation of it. As I mentioned, that climate change is obviously a major priority of Governor Brown, and CivicSpark was created to provide that support for local and regional initiatives because the administration recognizes that this is an all-hands-on-deck problem and that local governments are going to be key to the response. The goal for, in part, this partnership with the Governor's Office is to help local governments link to available tools, align with state goals, and also share the successes that we're hearing about and working about on the ground throughout the state so that we can accelerate our response. Our other program partners involve the Corporation for National and Community Service, which is a federal agency that administers AmeriCorps nationally, and they do all of the AmeriCorps National Service, VISTA, Senior Corps, FEMA Corps, all the programs that you may have heard of. In California, AmeriCorps is managed by California Volunteers, who does all state service programs, and they've been a great partner in this program in helping us to design and deliver quite an innovative AmeriCorps model for California and work closely with the governor's office on the development of this program. We also are working with Encore.org through their Encore Fellowship Program. Our core body of regional supervisors are all Encore Fellows, and they are retired project management professionals who are dedicating a year of their lives to provide service to the community in the form of being regional supervisors for our members. So they get to leverage their many years of professional experience and expertise as mentors, as project managers, and serve as a liaison to our regional partners and provide oversight to the members. And then, of course, we have our members. These are college-educated with a relevant experience. They come to the program generally from environmental planning, policy, environmental education degree backgrounds. They are passionate and committed to getting working on climate change issues, and they're looking for that first job experience generally, or to take their job experience to the next level by providing service through this program. We also have a network of 9 regional partners, and you can see on this map where the cluster of projects are throughout the state and which each of those regional partners are. And the role of the regional partner is really key to this program, because when the Local Government Commission and OPR were working to identify how the program was going to be structured, we heard over and over again that we needed to cluster the work locally, and we needed to understand what local needs were. And those regional partners that we've identified are on the ground, deeply embedded with their communities, and often have a wealth of networks and insight as to the kinds of projects that are going to be most viable. So they've served to help us engage locally, help to identify project partners, and also help the members stay connected to the needs and opportunities in the region, and ideally help to broadcast the successes we're having regionally so that there is more local ownership of the program and its outcomes. If you want to know more about any of these particular partners, you're welcome to reach out to us or reach out to them. Some of them are going to be very familiar to you, and we encourage you to ask them about their experience working with CivicSpark in their region. Also, if you can see, there's areas of the state where we don't have a strong representation of projects. We can ideally serve anywhere in the state. The projects have tended to cluster around these regional hubs, but if you're in an area where you don't have access to a regional team, most geographically, please get in touch with us, and we'd love to figure out how we can support you. So here's a few project examples from our current program year. You'll see by looking at this that we're doing work in a lot of different areas across the state, working on climate resiliency efforts in partnership with Bay Conservation and Development Commission, who's also our regional partner in the Bay Area. We're working on their Resilient Shorelines program, looking at Contra Costa County, looking at San Rafael, and looking more broadly at the region to understand what are the opportunities and pathways forward to deal with sea level rise. We're doing vulnerability assessments for some of the communities in Sacramento in partnership with the Air District. We are doing support for commercial energy use improvements in Benicia and in Fresno County. We're implementing some solar streamlining projects in the Central Coast. I won't read through the whole list, but I think you get a flavor for the diversity of projects that we're supporting, because at its core, and I'll talk about how we work in a moment, CivicSpark is a capacity building program. So for us, the type of project we're generally agnostic to, as long as it's about climate change, as long as it's helping the local government better meet the needs of climate change in the community, we want to try and support it. We also, in many cases, are trying to identify opportunities to work at a regional scale. So you'll see a couple of examples there, like from the Sierras, where we're doing energy action plans for 7 cities. By deploying the members working on a consistent product, in this case these energy action plans developed simultaneously for multiple cities, we hope in those instances to affect more regional scale change and deliver a standard set of products that can help more than one entity at a time move forward. After this webinar is over, one of the things we'll do, in addition to sending out the PowerPoint and providing the recording online, is we'll send a set of 9 regional flyers that we developed. So if you're interested to learn more about what projects we're doing across the state or in your particular region, you can read more about those specific projects, our regional partners, and the teams behind them. So how do we do this? What's our approach to working in this space? Well, first of all, I want to talk about our service delivery model, sort of the approach to cultivating these projects. The core concept here is that California, in order to meet its climate change goals and to prevent the significant negative impacts on the economy and environment, needs to leverage local governments. We've recognized for a long time that they're critical to these goals, but they need expanded capacity in terms of new program development, stakeholder engagement, or enhanced skills and expertise in order to take on the research, planning, and implementation tasks required for this work. AmeriCorps members are a great way to do this, working with local governments to implement these projects while simultaneously supporting some of the volunteer engagement and community engagement activities that AmeriCorps members are known for, provide a unique way to accelerate local government climate change responses. So CivicSpark is essentially a platform for this change. By recruiting and placing members across the state, engaging local governments in the program, and bringing them together to build capacity, we're affecting the kind of change we hope to see. Each team is composed of, as I mentioned, an experienced project manager who provides that oversight, and the members selected through a national recruitment process to be highly competitive graduates from college degree programs that ideally have a commitment to service and a background in looking at and considering and working on climate change issues. So a little bit down further is how we do it. I mentioned previously that we're agnostic to the type of project, but we have a process that we go through to try and provide some consistency in the way we approach projects and how we build that capacity in each site. So all of our teams go through 4 steps, which you see outlined here. They start with a gap assessment. This is after the project's already been greenlit from our staff perspective, and we'll talk about that process in a little bit. But once the members start the work, the first thing they do is the first thing most of you would do when starting out a project. They look at the context and try and come to an understanding of what that specific project involves. This is usually a fairly introductory activity. It's not comprehensive, but they're trying to get a lay of the land, and they'll talk to the local government staff involved with the project. They'll review key documents and make sure that the scope and goals of the project align with the goal outcomes that they're aiming for. They'll also define a couple of other elements of the program that typically are not going to be thought of per se by somebody proposing a project. The bulk of their work is actually implementing the specific project scope. And I gave you those examples before, and that's really where the lion's share of the work occurs. And these projects can range in size from 200 hours on up to several thousand hours, and really probably 85% of the work is going to be the actual project implementation. Now, as an AmeriCorps program, one of the goals and requirements of AmeriCorps is to try and increase volunteer engagement around the issues that you're working on. And so our members all seek opportunities to increase volunteer engagement around climate change in the community or within the local government that they're working for. What this can mean for many local governments is that simply they help to set up a volunteer program. They might help identify local universities or high schools that have environmental classes that could be a source of research support in the future. If there's already a robust volunteer program, they look to connect it with the activities and projects. So wherever possible, this volunteer engagement dovetails very nicely with their service projects themselves. All projects also include some level of transition. One of the things that we've often seen in this space is that a report or a project can be handed off at the end, but there's really no transition, no memorialization of the end of the project, no sharing of outcomes, and so it can be that that just goes and sits on a shelf. We wanted to institutionalize that transition and that capacity building outcome by having a fixed event or activity or handover that in some way enables us to say to the community or to the local government we're working with, here's what we've done, here's what it's meant, and hopefully here's where you can go with it. So as far as some of the activities to date, we just wanted to give you a sense of the scale of the program in terms of some of the metrics that we're tracking. Notably, we received 5 applications for each of our 48 open positions. This is comparable to very much more established AmeriCorps programs, and we're really proud that we received that amount of interest in our first year. We did it with a starting recruitment time of June and July, which was very late given the program startup, and we anticipate an even stronger and more competitive application process this coming year. AmeriCorps members, since they started in mid-October, have already provided over 18,000 hours of service to California communities. And by the time the program is done, we'll have provided close to 60,000 hours. This is a pretty significant contribution and effort and outpouring. And we anticipate over the years to come, as this effect multiplies, that the results will really start to pile on. In this work, we're currently implementing 36 discrete projects, which are assisting over 88 local government agencies across the state. And these range from small towns like Loomis in the Sierras, all the way up to LA County, or even regional agencies such as the Southern California Association of Governments. A couple of testimonials that we've heard, and again, we're just getting started, but it's been really encouraging to hear from our partners and some of the projects that we've been working on that we're exceeding their goals, that the work product that we're providing them already is helping get stuff done and get work done that they wouldn't have been able to do otherwise, and that we're advancing the dialogue and activity around climate change for the local governments and communities we're working with. So let me turn to some of the application details and the process for participating in CivicSpark for the coming year. So there's really 4 steps in the startup process for us. Initially, there's a project application. If it is available online already, there is a fairly straightforward basic project and contact application process to go through. You can either complete it online. You do complete it online, but the entire application questions are provided as a Word document, so you can prepare the application offline. It includes information about the applicant and about the local governments we're going to be serving. Those may not always be the same thing, and I'll talk about that and who can be a participant in a moment. But they can be different, or there may be multiple local governments that will be serving for a given project. There's also a service agreement. This is a fairly standard consulting services type contract. We have a template. It provides a place to describe the project scope in more detail and define the project hours and the total costs for the project. We have it structured as an agreement which has a core body and then some exhibits. We're more than happy to work with partners who maybe are going to require that we use their template service agreement but fold in our exhibits. So we're fairly flexible on those terms and conditions as long as they meet some basic guidelines for us and for the AmeriCorps program that we're part of. Once those things have been done, or in parallel with them at sometimes, we ask that the local government staff who are going to be involved with this project at whatever level complete a pre-service capacity survey. This is to set a baseline for understanding among the staff, for engagement in the community, and for setting the goals for the project. Because at the end of the project, we'll come back and have the person complete a similar survey, a post-service capacity survey, in which we ask those same questions to see if there's been any change, but most importantly, we reflect on the goals that were set in the project, and our primary benchmark is that we've met the goals defined by the beneficiaries for the project. So that's a really critical startup piece, is to get that survey done. It really is not very long. Usually people are telling me it takes between 5 and 15 minutes, depending on how much time they want to put into it. And then the last step is actually a step that I outlined already, the gap assessment, which is actually, once the project has started, the first step that the members are involved with directly is this gap assessment, where they're going to review key documents that relate to the local government and their work on climate change or the project itself, and sit down, whether through phone call or in-person interview meeting, to talk with the local government staff who completed the capacity survey to make sure we finalize the goals and define our approach to volunteerism and what that transitional strategy that I mentioned will look like. Again, to memorialize that so they have a clear roadmap going forward for what the project will be like. So I want to talk a little bit about eligibility. We tried to build a program that could serve local governments as a whole in California. But as an AmeriCorps program, we also are cognizant of need and wanting to devote our resources to those communities that need this capacity building service in the most direct way possible. So we had to set, I guess, a ceiling for participation. And for this program, what that means is that local governments, we can serve local governments who have a demonstrated capacity need that is measured by the absence of one or more of these three items, the first three items, and the project size must reach a minimum amount of service. So I'll talk about each of those a little bit. The third is probably the most needing of explanation. So does the local government have a dedicated sustainability staff person? It could be a sustainability director, it could be a climate change officer. They may not have that title, but it has to be their full-time job, not somebody who has this as part of their other responsibilities. Does the local government we're serving have formally adopted climate action plan or similar guidance or policy document that is giving them the direction for how they plan to implement climate action over the coming years with clear targets, goals, measures that they plan to implement? This could be a form of the general plan, it could be a climate action plan, it could be a sustainability plan, but it needs to be formally adopted by the governing board of the local government. And finally, are there specific mechanisms in place to annually track climate action progress? And this means more than just a periodic check that, or a staff report on an annual basis that, you know, what's the update on the climate action plan? We have a definition on our website of the kind and level of rigor that we're looking for, because frankly, in California, increasingly we're seeing staff dedicated to this work. We're seeing climate action plans, but very few local governments have a robust process for tracking progress. And so that's how we're defining the need for eligibility purposes, that one of those things is absent. Not all three, doesn't matter for us if it's just one, but at least one has to be absent in order for us to work with you in a programmatic basis. Finally, I'll just mention that the project size. AmeriCorps as a program is based on the notion of interventions, that member service is an intervention that makes a difference. We wanted to set a minimum delivery of service size where their work in the community could have a measurable impact in that capacity building way. And so we set the floor for project size at 200 hours. In some cases where we have multiple projects for multiple local governments that are smaller in size, we're working with a regional agency as the beneficiary. So if you, for example, if you have a council of governments, as we do in the San Gabriel Valley, who's delivering a point of permit program to, I think, 14 local governments, we're not going to serve each of those 200 hours, but in aggregate, we will be serving each of them, the Council of Governments. And I'm actually dead wrong on that. I just realized as I was saying, it was a bad example because we are actually serving each of those 200 hours, but we're also working with some other regional agencies. SACOG is an example in the vulnerability assessment. Gosh, I gave you the one example that was a bad example. I apologize, but I think you get the idea. Somebody has a question about what a robust process is, and I don't have access to our own website because I could read you the definition. But we're looking for annual reporting across the board for whatever measures. It's really, if you have the plan, what are you doing to track its progress? Here, I'll read you now. Thank you, Kristen. Tracking mechanisms will vary from community to community, but should be established systems and processes that allow the local government to, 1, monitor implementation progress on all measures in the climate action plan or similarly formal climate action policy, 2, document greenhouse gas reductions from implementation of each measure, and 3, update the inventory and revise targets and measures as needed to adjust to changing conditions. Tracking activities should be completed at least on an annual basis and should include council or board level as well as department level reporting that allows for discussion of outcomes and formal discussion of any needed changes. So that's kind of the level that we're looking for. I hope that answers your question. So the other part of the program, I guess you could call this an eligibility criteria, though it's not exactly program eligibility, but there is a fiscal contribution required. And CivicSpark is funded by both CNCS, that's the Corporation for National and Community Service, and by partner fiscal contribution. The fiscal contribution from local participants or local supporters is $18 multiplied by the total project hours required for the team to complete a given project. Now, what that 18 hours covers, it's a program cost. It's not the time that the members get paid. It's the time for the entire program to be operational. But we've pegged it to the project cost so that you all, as local governments or as participants, can gauge the scale of the investment based on the project size. So this $18 an hour is all-inclusive, which means that it covers both the member and the supervisor's time on the project. So you're getting a seasoned project management professional providing oversight and engagement and support on the project itself, separate from their administrative duties, along with the AmeriCorps member, as well as, at times, the LGC staff and extended program staff here at LGC who might be involved, all at that one price of $18 an hour. It is based only on the project work, not on administrative or training time spent by the team on the project. So AmeriCorps members serve approximately, they serve 1,700 hours over their 10-month service year. Of that time, we are anticipating that they're serving between 1,300 and 1,400 hours on project work. That other 400 hours or so is not passed on to the project partner. It's not tracked to them as far as deliverable work. Now, I will say that in many cases, the members spend time doing work that benefits the project that doesn't get billed. For example, all members have a capacity to do prep time. This is time they spend getting ready to do the project. Maybe if they have to take a detour during the project to learn about a particular topic, they code their time as prep time, and this doesn't get passed on to the partner. Their training is beneficial to the project implementation. For example, a number of our members are doing projects related to greenhouse gas inventories. However, we were able to provide as a training opportunity, I believe, 8 hours of training on ICLEI's Clear Path greenhouse gas inventory suite in advance of them ever doing the project work. Similarly, some of the volunteer engagement they might do in the community or service days are going to benefit the communities they're working in, but they're not passed on to the project partners as a cost. This also includes in this rate $1 per project hour for project-related travel expenses for the team. This means that if the project has a field component or if the member is not working on site with the project, they can travel to the site or travel in the field up to $1 per project hour. So for a 1,000-hour project, they'd have $1,000 of travel covered to offset that. So that's another asset that we can provide. Now, an important point to make here that I alluded to earlier with eligibility and the service agreement and the application is that the fiscal contribution does not have to come from the local government we're serving. It can be coming from it can come directly from the local government, it can come from an NGO, it can come from a sponsor, it can come from a regional entity that wants to support this work. They're not coupled necessarily, and we encourage opportunities and explorations potentially in partnership with us or in discussions in your region or with the regional partner, if you know them, about opportunities to fund CivicSpark without it having to come directly from the local government, because we recognize that while $18 per project hour may be a good price, and we feel like it is, and in many ways I can explain how it is an exceptional price, it's still real money, and we recognize that. And in these times, any expenditure can be really challenging. We'll also mention that for reference, the amount of this contribution is roughly matched by the federal and in-kind support. So you're seeing your money leveraging. So the full program cost is about $36 an hour, and of which we're looking for local contribution of about 1/2. Now, I mentioned that why I think the value is so great for this. As a comparison, if you were to hire a consultant, you would clearly pay much more for this work, and a lot of our work reaches the standards in some cases set by consultants. Not always, but in many cases the dollar value or the hours time contributed and the product are very high quality. And I know a number of our partners can speak to that. Another comparable example is hiring an intern. Most of you have, in one time or another, went out to look for an intern, and it's probably going to cost you $10 an hour for their rate. But once you're done with your fully loaded operational costs and overhead, you're going to be paying $20 an hour for the organization. And you have to manage all the recruitment, you have to manage all the onboarding, and there's no supervisor, and there's no admin support, and there's no professional development, and you're not part of a larger network. So these are all the reasons we feel like this program can be an incredible value, but also we're very, very aware that it is real money and are happy to talk with folks about opportunities to identify funding opportunities. So I'm almost at the end here of my part, and we'll turn to some more open questions, but I wanted to mention some key dates. We are taking project proposals now. We would love to hear from you if you just have an idea, if you want to submit an application, if you're ready to get started. Whatever state of the conversation and exploration you're at, we're ready to start talking to you. We know that budget season is coming up, and so it's important to start thinking about this, so we welcome your conversations now. Throughout this period, all the way up until almost the start of the program, we will be taking project applications. If need be, we'll take project applications after the program year starts. Ideally, we'd love to have a full plate before the program year starts, but we recognize that some projects take time and some funding takes time. In early July, we'll begin the member recruitment process, and the more projects we know about in advance, the more we can make our member recruitment align with the projects we have on our plate. Ideally, we're seeing service agreements finalized by late September so that by the time member orientation starts in October, we really have a solid sense of the projects coming up so that we can tee up their training and tee up our orientation around the projects that are going to be on the ground. And projects themselves will start in early November. I will mention, if you have any immediate needs, please get in touch with us, because we still have some bandwidth in this year's program to fill in some areas of the state with some project work for this year. So please don't hesitate to ask if you see needing something between now and November and want to really get rolling on it. So at this point, we'll open the lines for questions, whether you type them in or raise your hand using the raising hand function for the webinar, and I'm happy to try and answer any questions. Thank you so much for your time. As a reminder, while folks are maybe thinking about some questions, as a follow-up, we have recorded this webinar, so we will be putting it on our website, on the partner page, as a resource to either share with your colleagues or pass along. There will be another webinar if you think there's somebody who should have been on this webinar and wasn't, on the 2nd of April, same time. We will also follow up to all attendees of this webinar with the PowerPoint from the webinar and all of the regional flyers and an overview document on the program itself for you to use, share with your colleagues if necessary. Somebody's asking a question, asking us to share a particular project or a particular story. Oh my gosh, we've got lots of them. This has been really one of the cool things about the program. That is really just starting to get rolling. So every month, members are required to submit what we call great stories. It's an AmeriCorps term of what they've been doing. And probably in the beginning, they were mostly like, I'm getting my feet under me and I'm doing this. Now they're starting to turn into really compelling stories about what's going on. So one example I'll share is in the Central Coast. We've been working with the San Luis Obispo County Air Pollution Control District on a project to provide climate action plan implementation support. And one of the areas that they've been working on is solar permitting. They've been trying to help the local governments there assess and move forward with some streamlining initiatives for their solar permit process. And just, I don't know, a month ago, we got a report from one of the members who had just come out of a council meeting where they had unanimously approved the solar permitting process. And this was exciting for a number of reasons. The member had never, ever seen something like this process. They work coming from a local government background. So to nurture knowledge at the staff level and watch that sort of migrate its way up to see a decision be made at the council level was really exciting for this person, and they clearly had opened their eyes to the way that the system works around policy making and around making change in local government. It was also exciting from our statewide perspective because they had started by using the adaptation planning guide that OPR developed that is out there for anybody to use, but rarely probably gets drawn down, and they've used it and some of the other resources available from the state as the basis. So we were able to show that linkage between resources provided by the state going down to the local level, becoming change, and then going on up. Some other examples, oh gosh, we got this great story from our team down in San Gabriel Valley the other day. So they have been working just doggedly to get a program up and off the ground. It's a point of permit program. It's modeled loosely on the Fresno Home Energy Tune-Up program. They're doing it sort of territory-wide for the San Gabriel Valley COG. They've been building the materials, the website. They've been training themselves on what they're going to do when they start doing home energy audits. And we got this story from one of the guys down there that was all about the first call they got from a resident asking them to sign up for an audit. And it was just this sense of like, you just don't know what's going to happen when you build a program like this. And for him, it was this great moment where a real person saw their promotional materials, picked up the phone, they scheduled the audit that was going to happen in a week or so, and he was like, we're off and running. And that was a really cool a moment for us. Kristen, did you have a story you want to share?
The Sacramento region, 2 of our members just finished a vulnerability assessment that was really looking at climate impacts and specifically on transportation needs. And the thing that's really exciting about this, they are going to present to the SACOG board coming up next week as to their findings. But what's really exciting is they now have decided as next steps they will start working on an environmental justice climate vulnerability impact report. And this is actually one of the first ones that will ever be developed in the state. And so they are really creating it as they go, and really excited about the opportunity to make this something that can be replicated, can be given out by OPR, let's say, and replicated in other communities as well.
So you can see we could keep going. If nobody has anything else, we'll just keep telling stories because it's been great. It's been great to see what some of the regional partners have done, kind of as they've started to wrap their heads around how CivicSpark can be an asset. It's been great to see the state response. We send these stories as appropriate to our contacts at OPR. We've gotten some really positive feedback from them as they're excited to see the work they're doing. We have a project starting up in the Valley where we're going to be working in concert with CAL FIRE to provide education and sort of capacity building support around urban forestry, sort of gearing up for the next round of urban forestry cap and trade programs. Just a wealth of stuff, and we're going to see more concrete outcomes from these specific projects as we go forward. But the anecdotal work going on so far has been really neat to see.
Can you speak a little bit more as to the graduates, the AmeriCorps members?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say 80% of our members are recent undergrads within 1 to 2 years of completing college. Everyone has a college degree. That's a bare minimum threshold. Maybe 20% of our members currently have graduate degrees. They are coming mostly out of the policy and planning degree fields, though we have a few more base core science, biology, environmental science majors. We have folks coming out of more traditional political science or economics backgrounds, engineering backgrounds. There's no definite cutoff from the application perspective. What we're looking for is somebody who's got the motivation and drive and some history, frankly, with being engaged in environmental issues, and ideally a background of service. So a lot of our folks have done a thesis project related to climate work, energy work, environmental work. They might have been volunteering since high school on these issues. They might have been active in campaigns on their own campus. We ask every one of them to write a couple of essays about what they're trying to do with this professionally and what their commitment to service is about, so we understand that what they're getting into. We try and also screen for folks who understand this is a professional program, this is not an advocacy program. We're looking for people who are looking for that job experience and are excited about that opportunity. I hope that answers your question. Sometimes on the project side, we get requests from project partners for a specific technical base among the students, and we can't really guarantee that we're going to be able to give you somebody with a civil engineering degree or somebody who has a CEQA, written CEQA responses or negative declarations or what have you, or has an electrical engineering background. Given the way the program is structured with these teams and the way people apply, you're more dealing with a general capacity for this kind of work than a very specific technical capacity. In the rare instance, we might be able to, but it's not something I would ever promise. As far as the matching process goes, we tend to, because the projects are often not 100% dialed in, try and think of our teams as teams in a region and match the team to the work. So it might be that you get 2 or 3 people, and this is actually an asset to the program, assuming you're not taking a person sort of all in, which is done and can be done for the service year. But assuming you're not doing that, you have, say, a 500-hour project. We would want the supervisor there to figure out who among their team is the best fit for that project, and it might be multiple people, so you're not dependent on that one person alone, but you have a team, some of whom might have stronger communication skills, some of you might have better data analysis skills, but we would sort of try and implement that project. But there are also times where we would dedicate one person because they're really excited and they have the resources and the commitment to be the person to do that project. But you'd always have that supervisor providing a layer of oversight to their work and trying to ensure it meets your standards. What are the next steps and careers for the volunteers looking like so far? How are they supported? We're just getting to think about that. Our program will end in mid-September, so they're really at the halfway point here. This is when we start turning our attention in their training calendar to more career development opportunities, to more next step opportunities. Ideally, we'll be offering them coaching on resume development, on job search. We're setting up a training with Cal HR so they can learn what jobs in state government are like. We're trying to set up a bit of a networking process so that they can identify particularly state opportunities, but other opportunities. And we know that the regional partners and the regional supervisors are talking to them where appropriate about jobs, whether with existing partners or in other situations, but it's really just at the beginning stages of that. We didn't have in our budget at the outset a statewide graduation because of it's statewide, but we're trying to look at trying to bring everybody to Sacramento for a kind of career fair graduation celebration, which we also think would be a great networking opportunity for them. So we will be thinking and acting in this way quite a bit. Any other questions that we can answer? We got about 5 minutes left, and I'm happy to take small and large questions. If somebody has a particular project idea that they're thinking about, feel free to throw it out there. I will say, if you're thinking about projects, one of the things that I've said for a long time is, you know, a good project in some ways is a project that has a mixture of sort of data analysis or kind of analytic work and outward-facing work. These people are making a commitment to service, and they want to feel that service. So it's sort of a project with some high-touch components, whether it's working with staff in a leadership role or whether it's working out in the community, can be really empowering and help them sort of charge through some of those more darker days in front of the Excel spreadsheet or trying to crank through some of the writing that goes with the work we're doing. But we're also really trying to make it clear to people who join the program that this is not every day out in the field kind of AmeriCorps work as they might imagine in some cases, but this is learning a lot about being in a professional setting and supporting and working on change in a more professional public sector way. Well, if there's no other questions, I really appreciate your time and attention, and again, encourage you to just reach out. You have my information right there, the website to go look at more and get more information about the program. As I said, we'd follow up with a few things to put it right in front of your